welcome back to Reading with Tatiana. Today I'm doing my March wrap up for 2025, and this month I had a bit of a slower reading month. It was a good month though, I had a good variety of books. My first book was The Top 5 Regrets of Dying, A Life Transformed by the Dearly Departing by Bronnie Ware. And this book has been on my to read for a while because I've heard so many great things about it and that kind of stuff. I gave it a 5 out of 5. Well, almost a 5 out of 5. Like going in, I had really high expectations, and I love, not that I love death, but I love the idea of talking about death and what it means for different people and different cultures and how you treat death when you know it's coming or not coming or as you age and that kind of stuff. So I like how this book was talking about the top 5 regrets of dying. I kind of suspected, I kind of knew what they were, so it was very validating to read this book and see what they were. However, I felt like towards the end, um, Bronnie, the author, did inject a lot of her life musings and beliefs, and it felt more like a memoir, and that kind of like took away from the book. I really wish she focused on the people she worked with. So like in this book, the top 5 regrets, she basically became a palliative nurse caretaker for part of her career, and she kind of shared the stories of these people that she took care of in their days of dying until they died. And I really love those parts and those analogies, and it seems like a very rewarding job to have. And I really love that part. But again, like when she started sharing her own musings and how she dealt with things, it kind of took away from it, but I still really enjoyed it. The next book I read, I also had very high expectations going in, and I've heard so much about it. It took me a long time to get my hands on a copy of it. Is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. I also gave it a 5 out of 5. I had high expectations. I went in and it met it. I normally am not into sci-fi, or I feel like I've always said I'm not into sci-fi. However, every sci-fi book I've read since saying I don't like sci-fi have been really good. So maybe I do like sci-fi. I don't know. Or maybe I just really like sci-fi when it's like objectively like really good by the masses. So this book, like, it gave me the same feeling of watching a really good movie, but I already know, like, based on this book and the story between the two characters, there was no way this could be a movie. Like, it wouldn't hold up to it. But I wish there could be a movie of this. The closest movie I can think of that it kind of reminded me of is Adam Sandler had this like space alien movie that came out like last year on Netflix. It wasn't a comedy. It was a rare Adam Sandler, more serious movie, and it was like really good. This book really reminded me of that. I just really love this book because it touches on the theme of what it really means to be a human and the idea of a human civilization and the importance of connection and like how would the world react if we really were under threat of being attacked or being not attacked but being like on the threat of being our survival not existing anymore. I don't want to spoil it too much, but I just love this book. And I also love how it's very end of worldy, but also very sciencey. And even though a lot of things were made up only for the reality of this book, it still made a lot of sense. I really recommend people to read this book, even if you're not a sci-fi person. The next book I read is a book and movie combo. If you're in the mood for a book and movie, it's Perfume, The Story of a Murderer by Patrick Süskind. I gave it a 5, but let me explain how I got to my 5. I would say the first 80% of this book, I thought it's going to be a 2 or 3 stars. I thought there was such long, detailed descriptions that I didn't need to read about scents. I know the story is called Perfume, but it just went into so much detail about scents and perfumes that for me I'm just like glazed over, not interesting to me. I felt like the build up of his character, there was so much detail. He was in the cave for a really long time. Not a spoiler really. He was just in the cave. And basically, I felt there wasn't a lot of plot development for like the first 50%. But then it really started to pick up at the climax. I would say the last 20% of the book, it became a 5 because this book, I really don't want to spoil it. I think it's worth reading or watching a movie. But if you watch a movie by itself, you don't get the background or like the internal thoughts of all the characters. So it's kind of like WTF. I watched this movie with my partner who hasn't read the book, and he thought it was a really bad movie. But I thought the movie was a pretty good adaptation to the book and stayed true to the book. Alan Rickman and Dustin Hoffman are in there. They were great in it. But the last 20% of the book, I was just like jaw drop, eyes wide, like what's happening. It went so chaotic, so unhinged, And it really reminded me of a other book called Convenience Store Woman, where it talks about kind of like this everyday person and just how they have become very unhinged, and it's just a other planet. Really recommend this book. The last book I read is also a older book. So Perfume was a book I think in the 80s or 70s. Not This next book was the a book in the 70s. So it's Not a Penny More, Not a Penny Less by Jeffrey Archer. I gave this a 4 out of 5. This was a book club book, and a lot of people in my book club gave it a 2 or 3. But I think it was a good book that I've read again, like a movie. It had good action. Maybe because I'm in the financial services industry, so I felt like the first part of the book was kind of interesting. There are some data ideas in this book and some stereotypes that definitely do not age well. However, you have to remember this book was written in the 70s. So I think if you kind of remember that and just read it as a book and don't, overthink about the things that aren't totally politically correct, it's an enjoyable book. I thought it was a good like heist movie. However, after talking to my book club about it and kind of analyzing the book a bit more, I will say my 4 became a bit lower because I will say that the wrap up of the book was kind of abrupt and things weren't really that satisfactory. But in terms of enjoying how to read it, I really liked it. As I'm editing this video, I realized that I didn't do an outro, so thanks for watching until the end of my March wrap-ups for 2025. I also realized that recently I've been in the trend of just summarizing how I felt about a book, but I think I want to like go back to my original booktube where I did more like a summary of the book, but then also be mindful of spoilers and talk about like maybe more the plot and character development. So I'll try to do that more in future videos. But anyways, I'll see you guys next month. Bye!